Welcome back, Brother Dan. Today is a very big and special day for us with the groundbreaking. What was your vision for the church when you showed up here in 1995?
Every church that God has allowed me to pastor, one of the first things I do is walk around the exterior and the grounds and assess what I think the possibilities are and what the obstacles are. And I was most touched by the size of the present worship center because it was large enough to allow growth. But I recognized right away that if we stayed in this location, which I was inclined to think we should, that we were going to have to do something similar to what Hyde Park in Austin had done many years ago when they bought up the neighborhood, bought houses, removed them, used some of them for a time. I also tried to educate the congregation at that time that they were making statements on this busy street, Williams Drive, that weren't really the kind of statements that they wanted to be making. It looked a bit unkept. I won't go into detail, but the building looked like it might even be closed.
Thinking about your vision and when you first came here, talk to us a little bit about when did the vision enter into the hearts and the minds of the church for a new sanctuary, a new worship center?
Really very early on. We had a long-range planning committee 20 years ago that was proposing various ideas about a new worship center. We were doing 2 services and filling them pretty close to 80% capacity many years ago. The finances weren't there yet to do it. And so we put that on hold and remodeled the worship center.
You know, there's been some doors that have been opened and some doors that have been closed, inevitably in ministry. How has God opened up some doors and made this building possible for us?
Well, I think that you would have to point to the fact that Georgetown has just grown all through these years. We're not creating worship capacity at Georgetown like we're creating educational capacity, hospital and doctors capacities. And that's sad. There need to be some flagship churches that can accommodate larger groups of people. And I always, in my heart, wanted Crestview to be one of those that could do the big events and wouldn't always have to worship as 2 separate groups, but occasionally could come together for one great service. Outreach begins when you do not think of the building as your possession, but as an instrument of God to give people the opportunity to hear the gospel.
Has there been a moment that we need to capture in perpetuity?
When the gas leak came and we had to vacate this building, that was the most frustrating thing that I've ever experienced. But God used that time to help many of our people see how large the church was. You know, if you worshiped at 11, that's all the vision you had of the church. If you worshiped at 8:30, that's all the vision you had. But we had a room at the Sheridan and at the high school, Farming Arts Center, that would accommodate 1,000. And so they saw that 1,000 for the first time.
What do you hope this new facility will do to impact future generations?
Well, I think it solves a long-standing problem with visibility that Crestview has had. The original plan was to build a worship center, the present worship center, on Williams, but they widened Williams. That's why the worship center is where it is. I believe the new worship center is going to be visible enough for a variety of reasons, even while it's being built, that it'll turn heads. You know, a little more than 30 years ago, when I was pastor at Kingsville, we had established a decision not only to do outreach, but to do events, and do events that would draw people. So we brought in big name personalities from time to time. And people drove from 60 and 70 miles around to visit First Baptist Church, Kingsville, where I was pastor. Now that's South Texas, of course. People drove from Corpus Christi to come to some of our things. And so I always felt a little frustrated that doing events here, we really didn't have the facility for it. So many people become aware of your church. There are a lot of people who are not unchurched, they're dechurched. for whatever reason, somewhere along the way, they stopped going and attending a church. Events help you discover those people. They come in and they say, I think we ought to go here. The one that we did was the man who wrote 90 Minutes in Heaven, Piper, John Piper. We had people sitting on the steps to the balcony.
Wow.
And chairs in the aisles and people sitting on the platform. Of course, that was shortly after he had written his book. And so, but that was a warning to me that I could not do what I had done before.
Yeah.
We just didn't have the facility, because you can't get someone and say, oh, by the way, you're going to speak twice.
Brother Dan, I'm just curious. What words of encouragement could you offer the church today?
I thought just a little bit about that particular subject, and I remembered Eileen White. But one of the things that she said to me was, the way this community is growing, all you need to do is unlock the doors, and people will come. Now, there's some truth to that. But she also said, there are going to be so many resources pouring into Georgetown. And she couldn't possibly have seen what we're seeing today.
Yeah.
She said, there's no reason to be afraid. We need to do God's work with eyes of faith and with a heart that is passionate, and God will fill everything we build.